Welcome back to Western Kabuki. My name is Caleb. As every week, I am joined by my co-hosts. Alex, how you doing?
I'm vibing. It's a beautiful, blustery fall day in the Northeast, and I walked like 5 miles today. Ooh, amazing.
Yeah, Northeast. Fall in the Northeast is immaculate vibes. So I've seen online. Never experienced that, but I intend to. June, how are you doing?
I'm really good. You know, it's been a really chill day for me. I've been bored lately. I've been wanting to join like a new cult, or like I've been wanting to like dedicate my life to a new cause, a new panic, so to say. I've just been looking to be indoctrinated into something. So I think today might finally be the day. I'm ready to give my body to a cause. I am so excited. Yeah.
Okay, well, you picked a good week.
Yeah.
And we have a special guest, author and former Twitter mutual of mine for a long time before Elon saw fit to ban. Talia Lavin, author of Culture Warlords and Wild Faith, How the Christian Right is Taking Over America. Did I get that right?
You did.
First try, look at that.
The backstory is I was like, please don't mispronounce my name. And then just like made everyone feel really weird. A talent of mine. But hello, I'm so beyond delighted to be here. I'm psyched. I'm ready. I'm moisturized.
You're in the zone.
I'm in the zone.
Just because I don't remember. So you were suspended on Twitter? Is that what happened?
Well, okay. So do you remember? This is like very. I guess this podcast investigates extremely online stuff, so I can get into the lore. But basically, there was like a last day when non-paid blue checks were going to retain their blue checks. And everyone just went nuts with it and started posing as whatever, various world leaders or whatever. And I was just like, I'm going to pose as J.K. Rowling and say like, sorry guys, I'm an asshole. Trans rights forever.
Yeah, you were one of the old blue checks pre-change on Twitter that got by that change. That was like a year and a half ago. Holy shit.
I did get got like severely. I lost. I had like, I thought I'd get like suspended and then be able to come back, and I lost like a 6-figure following, which sucks. But I feel like in now Twitter, where it's basically just a hideous.
The utility of that site is it becomes less and less with every day. It's like completely useless at this point.
Well, yeah, I have I had my backup account for my now defunct podcast Moby Dick Energy. And so I started using that, but it had a tiny fraction of the followers. But so I don't know, I guess I have a vestigial Twitter presence now, but I did enjoy being like, sorry for being such a dementor, guys.
You sacrificed for the cause. You sacrificed yourself. I'm
an ally.
All gave some gave all.
Yeah. I feel like that earns me ally cred, right?
Oh, absolutely. No, you're safely locked in as ally. No, that's amazing. Yeah.
It's just like, man.
Yeah, I couldn't remember if that's what got you. Was that like, I think that was like April 2023. That was like a while ago now.
It was RIP at Swords Jew. But, whatever. Moving on to less horrific territory, I found Blue Sky to be a lot more just, good for the old sanity.
Yeah, some people give Blue Sky some shit, but it actually does feel like, especially now that there's a lot more people on it, it feels like kind of earlier Twitter. Yeah, like it's kind of a great vibe if you like avoid some specific corners. Like if you avoid like drama, which is pretty easy. I actually love Blue Sky as well. I hope Twitter still hasn't gone through with the block. Like as of recording right now, they have not changed blocking on Twitter. And I want
off that.
Is he? Okay, I hope not, because if he does it, there's going to be such a huge exodus to Blue Sky, and I kind of want that. Like, I want.
He's
that
a
really
coward.
bad.
He saw the writing on the wall.
Yeah.
For his right-wing propaganda machine to affect anything, he needs people to be on it. So I think that's why he's backing off of it.
I guess we'll see.
Any sort of.
Yeah, I do think so too. So it's been about a week since he announced it was changing.
It was supposed to be a week ago yesterday that he was going to do it, and he hasn't. So, but that's not what we're here to talk about.
As much as we love online shit.
It will probably come back to Twitter. It always does. But tell us about the book. I have an idea of why you wrote this, but why don't you tell us in kind of your own, I guess, if people haven't read your other book or know who you are, what's your relationship with this subject, and what's your book about, and why'd you write it?
Yeah. So this is my second book, which I think means I'm a real author now. Mom.
Congrats.
Yay. It's so my first book was called Culture Warlords, and it was about the subtitle written by my publisher in like very publisher melodramatic fashion was My Journey into the Dark Web of White Supremacy. But basically it's a chronicle of me, a Jewish woman, hanging out in a bunch of neo-Nazi chat rooms. Like, I kind of hung out in the Nazi bar, the proverbial Nazi bar, and was just like, what's up with this? How did we come to this point? This monstrous point. And so basically in the ensuing years, and that came out in October of 2020. So I'm just like cursed to release like hyper political books in election years.
Yeah.
Like right around when everyone's like, politics are really stressing me out.
And here you come. Here's more here's more for you to think about. Here's even more. You're saying you're sick of this? Here's some more.
I'm like, eat it, peasant. It's good for you. No, I don't. I only sometimes threaten and degrade my readers. But anyway, so basically in the ensuing years, as you guys may also have noticed, I was like, it seems like a lot of the stuff that I originally first only saw in neo-Nazi chat rooms, like the stuff the neo-Nazis were obsessing over, like, how is it that like I'm seeing like Congress people and Republican officials saying the exact same shit that I first encountered in like Hitler lovers Telegram. And basically it seemed to me that the quote unquote mainstream was just increasingly an extension of the sewers that I'd been investigating. And so I decided, okay, it's time to kind of take a more radical look at the mainstream and basically say, how did the mainstream get full of piss and battery acid? And the answer that I wound up coming to and the movement that I wound up investigating is the Christian right, the Christian, like basically the like politicized hard right Christianity as it's developed over the last 50 years.
Yeah, that's been something that I've kind of like in my whole time being an online person, not like a known online person, but from like early 2010s, especially like late 2000s, early 2010s. And I think I've mentioned this on this podcast before, and I'm sure you probably are very familiar with this, but like early Christian YouTube and like early atheist YouTube and like how they feuded, that was like something I was kind of very invested in for a while, when that was like the like political sphere, like that was like the debate that was happening on YouTube, and like content creators were kind of operating in this like anti-theist, pro-theist, specifically evangelical like realm, and I was like, oh, I've just always been very fascinated in watching the development, because like there was a time online where that
I
like
would love to see the June apologetics era, frankly.
apologetics era, like no, I was like like, wait, what do you mean by this? Like I was not pro I was not pro evangelical.
No, you were just in the trenches. Yeah,
I was in the trenches. I was in the replies. I was on Reddit. Oh, I was on Reddit. I was on our atheism. Oh, horrible time. Horrible time for me.
You were euphoric.
Yeah. But like just watching how like at that time it felt like evangelical far right Christianity was kind of at the tail end, and like it was like the cringe thing to do, where like no one really fucked with like Christianity, especially far right Christianity, evangelical Christianity. And it's kind of been weird to watch that change in the last decade, and how that's really taken over these like especially hard right spheres, where like this like traditionalist like Christianity.
It's very interesting too, because like back in those days, I would say, as somebody, so for context, for anybody who doesn't know, I studied religion in college. I switched majors, but I did study religion in college. And although I was never a Christian, it was just something I've spent a lot of time with and know a fair amount about. One thing that's kind of interesting to me about that is there at least at some point used to kind of be kind of a Christian intellectual tradition that is gone, I think, kind of completely. Because, and Talia, I'd like your thoughts on this too. It seems to me that the kind of neo-evangelical Christian right, these Christo-fascists, don't seem particularly concerned with even knowing or adhering to any sort of scripture. This is all just semiotics to them in a way.
I think, it's hard to generalize about groups of, a very large group. And there are certainly folks that can cite you chapter and verse and be very smug about it. And of course, even the most abhorrent of their political goals have these at least nominal scriptural ties. I don't know a lot about early Christian versus atheist VTuber beef.
Probably for the best. It's really not even that important.
There's not much to go.
I mean, I will say though, the whole time you were saying early Christians, I was just picturing like Thomas Aquinas, like having a YouTube channel.
He's a YouTuber.
Like Martin Luther, like making a video. Like I
got 99 theses. Like and subscribe.
YouTubers discovering Calvinism organically. Oh hell yeah, dude! That's extremely my shit.
Yeah, no, and the like channel name is like at Total Depravity. Like that being, so I grew up, so my religious context and how I came to all this is, I guess, sort of especially odd, but basically I grew up an Orthodox Jew. So I grew up very religious, just not Christian. And what I think that brought to my approach to the book was sort of twofold. I did a lot of interviewing of ex-evangelicals and reading a lot of sort of internal literature, like parenting manuals and marriage manuals, and books about prophecy, and including these amazing sort of dime store novel, like Christian thrillers, that are sort of like, what if Tom Clancy but with demons? And I think the way I had sort of two reactions, where one, like the idea of having your life totally dominated and controlled by religion was not foreign to me at all, because I grew up that way. At the same time, I didn't have like an inner vision of Jesus that I was raised with in any way. I wasn't raised to revere Jesus or find him a sacred figure at all. So to me, I was just kind of coming in, you sort of have to defensively adapt some knowledge of Christianity just to live in America. So it's not like I was coming in blind, and I did, seek to educate myself in some fashion, but I didn't have sort of my own personal Jesus where I was saying, like, you're doing it wrong. And this doesn't accord with what I was taught at all. So I think that gave me kind of a unique perspective, particularly when it came to interviewing ex-evangelicals, as I did many, many folks for this book. And I'm profoundly grateful to them for sharing some of the rougher experiences of their lives with me. And as to the book, the whole thing reeks of gender. I talk about gender a lot.
Those goddamn pronouns. They're infecting everything.
Yeah. Turning the fourth of my book into the fourth of shit. And yeah, and so I had a point, but I'm just going to end this rambling sentence now.
That's okay. I did have a question for you. There's something I think kind of unique to Christianity, I think, in that it appeals to people. There's a concept, like the concept of deliverance, right? I think in some ways, when I was talking about people who don't know scripture and who aren't concerned with it, I'm thinking of guys just like your typical prototypical conservative person who Trump is their Jesus, for lack of a better term, or something. Or even like Elon Musk, he's kind of like somewhat edging that kind of Christian heel turn.
He's like a deity to some people, the way that people kind of revere these
Please don't make me think about Elon Musk edging.
Sorry, my bad. Jesus, that's awful. God damn.
I'm just roasting you. It's fine.
You really threw Caleb off there.
Now I can't stop thinking about Elon Musk edging. Oh no.
He has to buy me a horse now. This is fucked.
Well, as Mike Pence once tweeted, there's nothing better for the inside of a man than the outside of a horse.
What?
These people are fucking crazy.
Do you remember that?
I don't.
It was like some quote that he was sharing, and I think he didn't realize that maybe the people who aren't allowed to talk
he hadn't
about
seen
sex
Mr. Hands. He hadn't heard of Enumclaw Washington.
He's only allowed to talk about sex with mother, so he didn't realize that it sounded like he was advocating for horse fucking. But yeah, sorry. Just speaking of haunting images.
It is almost Halloween, so that's perfect.
Yes.
Yeah, I wanted to be a little spooked.
By the way, I was trying to imagine what a Western Kabuki mask was, and I think I settled on a no style painted mask of Ronald Reagan.
Yeah.
I think that's what a Western Kabuki mask would
Spirit
look like.
Halloween, it smells weird when you put it on.
Yeah.
It's a little slimy.
Yeah.
Gross.
Anyway, sorry.
You're good. I would just what I was getting at is the concept of deliverance, right? To be rescued from their kind of material conditions. I think there's a lot of through line between just conservatism in general and Christianity. I think there's a real broad appeal to that. Do you see a lot of that when you were researching this book, of just that concept of people just really, really, really needing to be rescued, looking for something else, even if it wasn't necessary? I mean, it's Christianity, sure, but something a little deeper than that. Did you catch a lot of that?
Let me try to answer that thoughtfully. I think so much of what drives us to belief in general is a desire to be part of something bigger than ourselves and to attain what may feel to us like salvation, a desire to have a legacy after we die, whether that's in the afterlife or in the world. And I think this drives secular folks too, for sure. At least in the sense of wanting something of a continuance after we pass, wanting to be part of a larger cause. I do think Christianity, and again, I'm sort of comparing it to my upbringing, which like faith is really not at the center of the type of Judaism I was raised with. It's very like we didn't have altar calls, that kind of thing. Like that would have been very weird to my upbringing. But evangelical Christianity in particular is all about this sort of performance of deliverance and this sort of display of faith. And so, yeah, I do think there is something to the degree of zealotry and fervor that indicates perhaps this desire for something bigger and to be perhaps like an instrument of one's own salvation. Um, you know, that being said, I think there's also a little bit of just the madness of crowds and sort of being swept along by a movement that, for all its near infinite amount of flaws, is a locus of energy and community, and action, excitement for a lot of people. So I guess there is a sense of, I mean, certainly if you look at Trump's, for lack of a better word, spiritual background, his initial religious education was in the sort of prosperity gospel, Norman Vincent Peale, like, you know, the way you display your spiritual riches is by acquiring worldly riches. You know, Norman Vincent Peale was like his childhood preacher.
As a person who's unfamiliar with Norman Vincent Peale, can you give me an idea of sort of what his deal was and what his beliefs entail?
Yeah, I'm so sorry. I've turned into like a religion nerd and I'm not even a Christian.
Yeah, that's a new name for me.
So he was the guy that basically pioneered the prosperity gospel. So that's the same stuff that like Joel Osteen and Creflo Dollar.
Oh, like people like mega church type mindset where it's like you have to donate all of your income to us to please Jesus.
Yeah, where your money is a seed that you plant for the Lord. And it'll come back to you sevenfold. And again, just this idea, and I think it does have some roots in Calvinist doctrine, where kind of what you like your worldly your worldly sort of success is sort of symbolic of your spiritual success, and the two go hand in hand. So if you see a pastor, you know, flying on a private jet, that's not a sign of corruption. That's a sign of God's favor. So, you know, that's called the prosperity gospel. Norman Vincent Peale was sort of you can tell he's important because he has three names.
Donald J. Trump. Yeah, that's all the most like important people.
The Beatles of prosperity gospel.
Yeah. He was the progenitor of that beautiful, uniquely American attitude towards spirituality. So yeah, I think there is some element of like, well, you know, if I am able to show external prosperity, that will indicate that I'm good with God too. But yeah, I think it's a combination of things. The sort of human urge to be part of something larger, and then enthusiasm and excitement for like giving America a spanking or whatever.
One thing that I think, I'm sure I'm not the only one that's noticed this, but something that I've noticed, especially since Biden's become president, I feel like it's ramped up a lot more in recent years, is this shift. And like Elon Musk is an example of this. Russell Brand is an example of this, probably Jordan Peterson also, where they'll kind of shift towards a conservative ideology very slowly, but very openly and blatant if you're not kind of stupid. Because, you know, there's people like Tim Pool that are like, oh, no, I'm a liberal. But then they're like saying, I'm going to vote for Trump. So it's like, of course, it's always going to be going that way. But like a common thread among all of these people that I've noticed is their eventual interest in Christianity. Not even in a sense that it seems like they become blatant Christians. I think Russell Brand is an example of someone who probably became a Christian because he sexually
got
assaulted
canceled,
someone. He
yeah.
got canceled, and he was like, "This is the only lane I have is now if I become a Christian." But people like Jordan Peterson and Elon Musk, who were very secular people, I think, very openly prior to this like weird right-wing shift where they start to embrace this like Christianity as like a veil for I call it like a veil because I don't know if they're being genuine or if it's just for like show, kind of how like
I can
Donald
tell
Trump.
you the exact moment. I have a funny story about this, by the way. I was talking to a listener of our show, and I hope she's listening. She told me she went to, I think it's University of Toronto, where JP was teaching. Is that right? Whatever university he was teaching at.
Yeah, Toronto.
I know
yeah.
the exact moment he converted to Christianity. I didn't know this, but his Jordan Peterson's students used to literally lock him in his office. Did you know that? I just found out about this last night. She was telling me when she attended that university, it was like a big controversy that he kept getting. It was like when he first started talking shit about trans people, they kept locking him in there.
He's the first adult, the first professor to get bullied.
Yeah.
like
He
thrown
found
in the locker.
Jesus
He was like
while,
thrown
like-
in his locker.
I like to imagine it. He was stuck in there for like 6 hours, and the only thing that he had to read was a Bible.
I'm going to need you guys to go ahead and unlock
Anyway,
the
I'm
store
sorry
for
for
me,
that, Jim.
please.
No,
That's amazing.
I'm just imagining the like frog-like weeping that
Yeah.
came out from behind the office door. I mean, yeah, with Russell Brand, oh my God, he tweeted out this like ridiculous picture of him baptizing someone, and he's got like a man bun and tidy whities.
Yeah,
like,
that was really uncomfortable.
Like his dick was so close to that guy's face. That was the first thing I thought of, which maybe doesn't speak well of me.
No, I'm right there with you, and I'm straight, so I don't know, man. I was just
but
weird.
Speaking of the like old head atheists, like Richard Dawkins also has been.
Oh my God! Yes, amazing example. I'm so glad you remember that because he's sorry to interrupt you, but he's kind of doing the same thing right now.
Yeah, and he has for a while. I mean, I think he was just like the barbarism of Islam must be defeated, and I'll do that by being like, look at the beautiful churches and Western culture is superior, and so it's very much that vibe where I think some people, some conservative figures approach Christianity as sort of a vector of their overall embrace of whiteness. Some people come to it as like a spiritual colon cleanse for like having been caught doing rapes and stuff.
Oh yeah, Russell Brand, prime example of that, I think.
Yeah, I mean, well, I don't know. I'm not gonna like allege rape, but he was canceled for sexual improprieties.
Yeah.
And so there are different like vectors to get there. In some cases, racism. In some cases, misogyny.
A big one lately I've noticed is transphobia. That's been like a very large overlap for a lot of these people in the last couple of years, I've noticed. People, because I think that's Richard Dawkins' lane recently, is he's like kind of also being transphobic, and he's like kind of embracing spirituality in his arguments. And it's like, this is not like, for context, people who don't really know too much about Richard Dawkins, he's one of the guys that was like kind of big in early atheist YouTube. Not that he was a YouTuber, but he was, and this is, I hate this. I am so sorry. This is going to be really cringe, but he was, and this is calling back an old part of me, like old high school me, where he was one of the horsemen of atheism. He was one of the 4 horsemen of atheism. It was him, like Christopher Hitchens, and like 2 other bozos.
I mean, he wrote a book called The God Delusion. It doesn't get much more
I was gonna
atheist than
say,
that.
yeah.
Yeah. So like
Like,
he
it
was like
doesn't-
the guy for atheism.
It's not like that you're cringe. He wrote the God Delusion
Yeah.
for a reason, and I think especially for a lot of people who grew up in these very like harmful and difficult religious environments, like seeing someone very openly defy that, in the Bush years, like, being an atheist was still countercultural. I think
It was, absolutely.
ultimately what undid the new atheist movement and what has resulted in so many of these figureheads becoming open to transphobia and Islamophobia and misogyny is because their movement was, okay, it was never particularly inclusive. You had a lot of misogyny from like out the gate. And there was never really any kind of sophisticated power analysis whatsoever, so that the people who would then who were like, oh yeah, we escaped this harmful form of religion, and then kind of their analysis wound up being, well, everyone else is dumb for believing in Sky Daddy, and we're the only smart one. So I think at a certain point, if you are engaging in critique without being sort of thoughtful about the underlying societal power dynamics, you wind up often being cruel and often opening yourself up to the very sort of reactionary ideology that you initially set out to fight. Especially with an aging cohort. I mean,
Oh
that's part
yeah,
of it too.
absolutely.
But yeah, I mean, you've seen like a lot of embrace of some really dubious figures, and um like Sam Harris, another one.
Yes, he was one of the other four horsemen of atheism or whatever. It was Sam Harris. He was one of the four.
Yeah, I just like, I don't know. I'm not sure I would feel comfortable sharing an elevator with any of the horsemen. I mean, not just because they're on horses, and that would be bad in an elevator, but just you know what
It's
I
a little
mean.
tight, yeah. No, just for clarification, I think the one of the three that I haven't mentioned, or one of the four that I haven't mentioned, was just like actually like kind of a all right dude. He was just kind of like a magician or something. I don't know why he was involved in it, but he was just
Was
like
it
some
James Randi?
Yeah, wasn't it James Randi?
Yeah, that dude. I think he's okay. I hope.
Yeah, he wrote a book debunking faith healing that was incredibly entertaining.
Yeah,
I
he
really
was.
enjoyed it.
He's always had like a really normal angle of anti-theism, I think. Whereas like the other three kind of went off in this like very anti-Islam route that turned into a very reactionary ideology over the years.
Well, it's sort of like it coincided with the global war on terror, and so they meshed their atheism with the sort of prevailing winds. And that's how you get super racist in your movement.
Yeah.
I do enjoy that I came on here to discuss radical Christianity, and we're here critiquing the atheist movement because legitimately, I am disappointed in those guys. You had so many people who were counting on you, and you fell down on the job.
I know.
Yeah.
They hung up the hats. What was the fucking hats called? The cringe hat.
Just
the fedora. They hung up the fedora. Yeah.
Come on, June. How do I know you're the atheist? How am I picking up the slack?
I forgot. I've locked this part. I've locked this memory of that time of my life in a deep vault. So I'm trying my best to recall some of this stuff.
I mean, yeah, it's like this is the moment where people are, where there's this theocracy just really making its way into America, and your big bold move, buddies, is like having already made yourself useless by being reactionary assholes. I'm unimpressed. There's so many people who could use like strong, thoughtful, anti-religious messaging right now, and
it's really not a thing. Really, really not a thing in any capacity. And it seems like a lot of these people that have this like very traditionalist, very trad evangelical mindset have like these crazy, insane audiences that are like Andrew. I don't know if Andrew Tate is necessarily one of these people, but people like that, where it's like this very like masculine, very religious platform are able to like kind of spread this like traditional, this like trad mindset in a way that I hadn't seen really on the internet at all in my time on the internet. Like that was like kind of cringe. Like if you were like a hyper religious person, you were like being dunked on. You were like being made fun of. Like you could not be like openly very religious like at all for a while.
Yeah, Christians were super persecuted.
Yeah, they were it was kind of really hard to be Christian online. It was kind of
Oh,
like being
yeah.
like trans back in the day. It's kind of harder than being like gay.
I mean, yeah, I would also.
I'm joking, to be clear.
Oh
about
God.
that.
Okay, I was like, okay, this has gone in unexpected directions.
No.
Like I just think that's like such a like Wall Street Journal op-ed. Like Christians are being devoured by the lions of trans people on the internet. Like yeah, that's where I would expect to see that. And I was like, what? What's happening? What podcast am I on?
I have a little update. I'm going to be working at the Wall Street Journal. I was just starting this week is my first week.
I thought you were at the New York Times.
Now I got laid off for being a Christian.
Oh no, that's terrible. You could always work for Barry Weiss's outfit.
I tried. I'm trans. I'm not the right kind of trans. I have to be Blair White first.
Oh yeah. Or like it's time to detransition.
That's a very lucrative grift.
Yes. I've spent an unhealthy amount of time thinking about how much money I could be making because, and just to dovetail it back to the subject of at hand, Christians on the far right love a conversion narrative.
Oh yeah.
It's their favorite thing. It really dovetails with the rest. They're just all about that. Like, I denounce my former faith and I've changed.
It's so easy to get in a sphere of any sort of like, I don't want to say it like, I don't know the exact word to put it, but like the trans people, they love to prop that up. They love like a converting to Christianity sort of narrative. They love like going from woke to non-woke. People, they love that shit. They eat it up. Oh, it's so easy, I'm sure.
Yeah, and it's an old grift too. It's not like it is internet era, and I think it gains a lot of purchase online.
Yeah.
But actually, one of the big old drivers of the satanic panic was a book by a guy who claims to have led a satanic cult in the US. His name is Mike Warnke, and he claimed to have had 1,500 Satanists doing Satan-y stuff under him, and released a book and did a big speaking tour about it. And then he converted and saw Jesus and went away from the evils of Satan, and people really ate that shit up. So that was one of the drivers, actually. So yeah, there's long been a love of and embrace of the like I once was lost and now I'm found, Amazing Grace kind of narrative. And there's a lot of money in it.
Yeah. Speaking of the satanic panic, I want to spend the rest of this episode, if it's okay with you guys, talking about probably just the first two chapters, the satanic panic chapter, and then depending on time, if we can get into some of the fun stuff, the QAnon and internet aspect of it.
Oh, absolutely.
So, Talia, for those who don't know, what was the satanic panic, at least as we kind of broadly contextualize it in like I guess whatever the 80s into the 90s.
Yeah. So, how to explain this without sounding insane? I feel like this is true of a lot of. Like,
it's one of those things you have to like get the cork board up on the wall and start putting pins
the best
everywhere.
Place to start would be like McMartin, I would imagine.
Well, yeah. Do you want to talk about the drivers, or let's talk about the phenomenon first? I suppose.
Yeah, let's tell people like what it was, then we'll get into the rest of it.
Yeah. So essentially, through the 80s and the 90s, there was an ongoing moral panic. The satanic panic is sort of the big cultural watchword for it. There are lots of other terms for it. The daycare panic, the child sex abuse panic, whatever you want to call it. But basically, there was a very widespread. I think at one point in 1994, the New York Times said there had been like 12,000 sort of denunciations and or accusations. that daycare workers in specific were sexually abusing children, and in many cases were doing so under, like, in service to Satan, and performing these elaborate satanic rituals. Um, that they were, abusing children, but specifically in the name of their dark god, Lucifer. And this became just it's very difficult to overstate how omnipresent this narrative was. You're talking about, Geraldo doing like big old specials on the satanic evils. It so and then the perhaps the most high profile trial was that of the McMartin family, who ran a daycare in California. And it involved 7 people. So it was a family run daycare. So several were members of the McMartin family. And then, there were some women who also worked at this home daycare. And the trial wound up lasting for 7 years.
And it cost
It
how
was
much
at-
money? It was
God.
millions, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was the longest and most expensive criminal trial in American history. And the allegations against the McMartins were
Insane.
insane. Yeah, like
What were
if you
some of the
look at-
things that the kids said? Because if I remember correctly, I did some work on this subject some years back. But as I recall, the children were saying, I remember one kid said that he was flushed down a toilet and taken into a room where women were flying around or something, and there was like all kinds of bizarre.
Wait, so is this stuff, was all that taken seriously in court?
Yes.
What?
Yes, the longest and most expensive trial in American history
What?
over a child. There were a lot of different things. I don't want to downplay some of the other aspects of it, but yeah, like a lot of it was just genuinely insane. There were tunnels under it. If I recall, Talia, correct me if I'm wrong, but they excavated portions of the daycare to try and find these tunnels.
the secret orgy tunnels. Yes.
Yeah, the secret
What?
toilet orgy tunnels that a child had apparently remembered through dubious psychotherapy or something.
Yeah, so this is where we go back to like what led this to happen at this point in time. And the real, like, this is the part where it starts feeling almost a tiny bit quaint. Like you're like, oh, it was before the internet when like books could cause a like an enormous
Michelle
social.
remembers. Is that what you're talking about?
Yes.
Yes.
So there was a book.
Jesus
Came out in
Christ.
1980. That's sort of if you have to pick like a single direct cause of the satanic panic, that would be the book Michelle Remembers by a Canadian psychiatrist named Lawrence Pastor, and his patient / wife, which should tell you something about his
No problems
professional
there.
ethics right off the bat. His patient / wife, Michelle Smith. So the book is a chronicle of her.
She was the co-author of the book too, wasn't she?
Yes.
Patient,
they
wife, and
wrote it-
co-author. What a
Patient,
team.
wife, co-author, just, the dream team. And
Power
so
couple.
but like actually though, like horrifyingly enough, just that this is okay. But yeah, so Pastor, so basically it was a chronicle of her therapeutic journey under Pastor, literally and not, where he used this technique called recovered memory therapy, which then sort of became really a fad and super de rigueur in psychiatric practice in the 80s and 90s, where basically she claimed to have recovered these memories of being abused sexually by a cult of Satan worshipers at the age of 5, and that then the Virgin Mary erased her memories so that she could, survive her life until the right moment, which was when she met her psychiatrist slash love of her life, Lawrence Pastor,
And co-author.
and co-author, and they, and this book was a monster hit, just a huge bestseller. This also comes
You
on
could
the
probably
heels
still find copies of it at various Goodwills.
I mean, it was everywhere.
Yeah.
And we're talking like #1 bestseller, big ol' honking, success. And in addition to sparking the recovered memory therapy fad in psychiatry, where basically you had patients being really prompted by their psychiatrists in a way that's like a little bit reminiscent of sort of those Scientology sessions where it's like, let's take you back to this past life. We're talking that level of prompting. The book also, it was Pazder that coined the term ritual abuse, which was sort of the term of art for like your kids' teachers are worshiping Satan and flying around with goats. And by the way, when I say that, that's all like stuff that was actually alleged in actual trials where people actually did hard time, because America, wonderful country we've got here.
So what became of the folks at this daycare? Like, did they get found guilty? Did they get found not guilty?
Yeah, they found proof of them flying around with witches and goats. They were put in jail for that for decades.
So they were eventually cleared of all charges, but keep in mind that the initial arrests in the case were made in 1984, and the case didn't resolve until 1990. So
it's also probably worth noting that in the McBarton case, Talia, you may remember her name. The woman who made the initial claims ended up getting diagnosed with schizophrenia. So this was all like based off of just complete non-truths.
Yeah. I mean, they also weren't flying around with secret orgy tunnels. Like,
well, I don't know. I think the orgy tunnels could have been real. Maybe they didn't excavate the right areas.
They didn't have you looking around.
You're an orgy tunnels truther?
I am a toilet orgy tunnel truther. That child was flushed down the toilet.
But there are other people, including a couple that I talk about at some length in the book. Poor Fran and Dan Keller of the Austin area, who were accused of similarly just, I'm not using the word insane to like harm mentally ill listeners, because I myself am mentally ill.
You're in good company.
Like panic attacks style. But yeah, they were accused of like putting like horse dung in a kid's like asthma nebulizer and like burying the children in graves and stuff like that. But this poor couple in Texas wound up doing like decades of hard time in prison as a result of these recovered memory accusations, where the kids at their daycare were just absolutely prompted by.
Just as a colloquialism too, the phrase that people kind of use in a shitty way, show me on the doll where you were touched or whatever, comes from McMartin, just for whatever that's worth, because they had dolls and they would have a recovered memory therapist come in with the kids and use these dolls, and that was presented as court evidence of these potentially, or ostensibly rather, recovered memories.
God, that's awful.
So basically these early cases is what led to this like large society panic of this like satanic movement like ravaging like the country. Is that like kind of like the thesis here, is that there was like these early books and accusations that
Yes.
took up like all of this media attention.
Yeah. Well, like as
Yeah, I
Talia
mean,
said,
the
go
McMartin
ahead.
trial. I'm so sorry.
Go for it.
Oh, just needless to say, the McMartin trial was a press, darling. It was a huge scandal and sensation, and just truly hard to overstate how much attention it received. And other similar, but like the other thing that's really wild about these cases is that it wasn't like you'd think sort of on the face of it that it was sort of just fringe Christian wackos that would have kind of ascribed to this. Like daycare workers all over the country are in Satan worshiping rings, but actually it was a really broad coalition of people who were fully invested in the satanic panic narrative. So, Janet Reno, who went on to be Attorney General of the US, like prosecuted one of these cases in Florida. You had obviously like a number of members of the psychiatric profession were profoundly involved. You had actually initially some, and somewhat tragically, some feminists and victims' rights advocates who had basically been ringing the alarm bell about sexual abuse of children and like saying, incest and abuse is really way more widespread than you think, which is true. But they kind of got sucked in as like some like people are finally taking sexual abuse seriously. And then of course the Christian rights angle on it, in addition to this sort of well, as we've been saying, the devil is present in your daily life. The other element of that is that a lot more women had begun participating in the workforce,
Right.
in the wake of the feminist movement in the 70s. And so you had suddenly like a lot more daycares were popping
I
up.
never even put that together. That's interesting.
Yeah.
I guess
These
daycares are a new
related
concept.
to like these are almost always reactions to like social movements or I mean economic to a different degree, but yeah, like I would argue, Talia, you I want your sense on this too, but even kind of the modern take on this really is these are direct reaction to various social progress movements. I think that the panic around trans people being pedophiles and all that is also that kind of moral panic is just it's always in reaction to some sort of social progress. That's the through line I've always kind of seen.
Yeah, I mean, social change begets social backlash. Social progress begets social backlash, and in many ways, the daycare angle on the satanic panic specifically came out of the fact that suddenly women were participating in the workforce in unprecedented numbers, and so many of them required childcare for their young kids outside the home, and so daycares were cropping up all over as this new wave of women, join the workforce. And so it is not, in fact, a coincidence that the supposed locus of all of this devil worship was, the institutions that allowed women to work outside the home, something that the Christian right was profoundly opposed to.
Right.
So it's all very convenient.
And
that
same
sense.
could be said about, like you said, like the trans panic, the gay panic, of course. I mean, one of the main angles back in the 2010s and even before for a long time was, it's like, it always comes back to corruption of the kids or like the grooming of the child's mind and stuff. And that is always like, at least as long as I've paid attention to different reactionary forces against any other social movements. Yeah, it's always been that reaction. It's always been like a panic of that same sort. Not necessarily a satanic panic, but some of. I mean, you can usually find the roots, I think, in most social panics in Christianity. That's at least the through lines. I agree completely. The through lines I've seen.
Well, I mean, the Christian, the sort of most politically active Christians for the last 50 years, or at least the loudest ones, have been, essentially the forces of social reaction since the 60s.
Mm-hmm.
And the other thing that's really interesting to me, um, I mean, with regards to the trans panic, what you'll see all the time is like, well, this is the end of Western civilization.
Yeah.
This
Thank
is the
God.
breakdown of consensus reality. And that's what like a figure like Dawkins, right, is saying, and why he's, like essentially trashing all his prior life's work is because, well, we're in this mad world where blah 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 transphobia.
Yeah.
And the same exact shit was being said by like anti-feminists and by uh the people by segregationists. It's really always the same playbook of when previous social mores that were unjust get upturned, you know, it does signal the end of a certain kind of order. The order where, presumably the reactionary speaker felt themselves to be at more of an advantage. But I would argue that, I don't think that that entails the end of the collapse of the West, blah, blah, blah. Like the rest is just the same shit. The devil's ascendancy. Yeah, so moral panics often rhyme. And yes, like we are the only ones defending the children against perversion is it
Yeah.
also a very common theme.
Yeah.
And I think Caleb, you wanted to touch on also is like the QAnon movement.
Yeah, I was going to say that's what I'd like to end it on, because just as a heads up, I want to be respectful of your time, Talia, but we also have another thing after this. So I didn't want to be impetuous. I didn't want to like cut you guys off, but so if it's okay, yeah, you mentioned
So go
earlier.
back to the club.
Yeah, so I guess the overlap I wanted to say there is I remember this was I think in the 2021s, but it was like like real insane trans panic, but it was still like post QAnon in so far as QAnon isn't really around in the same capacity as it was in the Trump years, but it was like this era where I'm sure you guys remember the Save the Children or like Save the Kids movement. That was like
The mole children. We forgot about them. We failed them.
we failed. I don't know where they went.
They're still under Central Park.
Yeah.
Being harvested for adrenochrome.
Yeah.
Terrible.
And like that was like a weird one where it was rooted in QAnon, but it wasn't really in reaction to any specific social panic as far as I'm aware. Like I think people were trying to link it to different specific social movements. And I think the trans panic is kind of what won out of that moment. But that was like a weird era where it was like they were panicking about something. They were kind of making up some of it, and it got to the point where they were like, "Oh, Wayfair is sending kids in boxes."
I forgot about the Wayfair one.
The Wayfair, yeah. There was like they're in the couches. They're sending kids in couches.
By the way, I worked for a company that shipped on Wayfair during this point, and we got some fucking crazy comments on our social media during that whole scandal. By the way.
Holy shit!
Oh my god!
I could dream of saying this sort of shit you'd see.
Yeah, I mean, my personal theory of why like the mole children stuff really took off, that was during COVID.
It was,
and,
yes.
I think a lot of the conspiracy stuff focused around the idea that like Donald Trump had ordered the U.S. Navy ship Comfort, which was stationed off New York City, because people were dying by the thousands, and we needed like literal naval support because our city was overrun with the dead. Yeah, I mean, if you posit that often the forces of reaction are responding to social upheaval and distress,
COVID.
yeah, is COVID. That was a really upsetting time.
That was.
It was.
So, that's just one woman's take. Like,
I mean, I
why
feel
could
like I could
people
see
possibly
somebody
have been?
when they were digging those mass graves on Rikers can kind of snap. I don't know. That was really fucking scary time.
It was.
I mean, a lot of people also lost their fucking minds during
I think
COVID.
everybody did to some degree or
and I
another.
still
Everyone
think,
did.
and I still think we're like living in the wake of that, especially. And like right wingers, like maybe I could be wrong. Maybe I'm being naive. I've been following politics for over 12 years, or no, way more, like 14 years at this point. And I feel
Oh
like
my
the
God,
fever
you're 14
pitch
years old. That's so
out of the womb, in the womb, I was like, I need to
June
go
is
under the cover.
one of the mole children.
Yeah, yeah. No, I was brought up in underground. But no, like as long as I've been paying attention, like right wingers have always been kind of insane. But it feels like in this current moment, post COVID, post QAnon, post first Trump presidency, especially now in this maybe second Trump presidency, it just feels like
God,
everyone
no.
is insane. I don't think he's gonna win.
rebuke it.
I don't think he's gonna win, but it's possible. You never know. But I just feel like people are at like this truly insane fever pitch, and maybe it's because I'm still like on Twitter every day or so. Maybe I'm like maybe that's by design. Elon Musk has brought every insane person onto the website from whatever annals of the internet they were using before, like 4chan, Facebook, who knows. But it feels like we're at a real fever pitch with insanity. And I do think COVID brought that out in a lot of people. I don't know.
People everyone was so isolated and people had nothing to do. So if you were already, and people were scared. And so if you had any conspiratorial bent, there was so much fear mongering happening. And QAnon and similar theories and fellow travelers saw this huge explosion of folks adopting and really going very deep down the rabbit hole because they had nothing else to do. And they're like, I guess I'll become obsessed with the devil. Like the wellness community had to like release a whole like a bunch of yoga influencers put out this statement in 2020 that was like, stop associating wellness with like QAnon. Because so many people who were like crunchy granola and anti-vax curious started
the spiritual gangsters of the world.
Just getting really fucking wild-eyed about like the devil. When it's like, hey guys, here's my acai smoothie, and the devil is kidnapping children. And so, yeah, I think
that's what happens when everybody wants to be a spiritual gangster instead of a spiritual doctor or spiritual lawyer.
Or a spiritual accountant.
It's the shittiest joke I've ever told on this podcast. I'm sorry.
It was my favorite part of the episode so far.
That's great. No, that reminds me though, just kind of very recently, especially like during the P. Diddy stuff, like as that was like really coming out, I was at one of my favorite bars, and I was with someone, and she was in the bathroom, so I was just kind of sitting at our table by myself, and this guy that's typically there when I'm there, I've talked to him previously. He came up to me and he was like, he was looking at the TV above me, and he was like, sometimes I think that they're trying to test us. They're trying to see how long it's going to take, how much information they can give us in our brain before we all break. They're trying to make us break. And I'm like, yeah, dude. Yeah.
Oh, man.
Yeah, man. All right. So like, I don't know, like it just feels like everyone is like that now. Everyone has just like this conspiracy brained mindset.
I mean, I'm like that now.
It's COVID. COVID is the part that's done this to us. Yeah.
I mean, we had this like mass disabling, like terrifying, traumatic 2 years that we've all just memory hold. And just like so much of the subsequent decades can be explained by like World War I and the Spanish flu, but we don't talk about them so much. Yeah, like we're definitely dealing with the aftershocks of that event. And yeah, so it was a mass, I would argue that it was, in addition to being a mass disabling and mass death event, it was also a mass radicalization.
Oh, absolutely.
Event. And yeah, and it did, of course, tread into the perfervid realms of demonology. So this goes into my theory that moral panics never die. They just hibernate and recur.
And some of my favorite posts, and it's not a good thing that I'm seeing these because it's bringing back this early panic, like satanic panic. I'm sure if you're on Twitter, you saw there was a while ago where there was like, I forget which performing artist, but there was like, it was like Beyonce or someone had like a red background and she was like wearing a red dress, and there was like
Super Bowl.
Yeah, okay, and it
And
was
all
that.
the people, because the Super
People
Bowl is always
lost their minds.
Yeah,
They're like,
moth to a flame for the halftime show every year.
Yeah.
So
I did enjoy when Lil Nas X was like, "Fuck you, I'm dressing up as gay Satan."
Yeah.
And then people just went absolutely nuts over it. I mean, like, let's just say this. Like, okay, so right, so fast forward. Like, okay, so you got the McMartin preschool trial. Oh, it ended in 1990. Eventually, at some point, there's this shamefaced, oh, sorry about that whole satanic panic thing. That was all nuts, right? Fast forward to 2016, and like, it's like millions of people are positing that the Democratic nominee for president is like drinking children's blood and worshiping Lucifer, and like harvesting their hormones for immortality juice.
Yeah.
You know,
and like there were people that were like, no, I saw the video. And it's like,
yeah, I saw Frazzle Drip.
Yeah, like, what are you talking about?
Yeah, for a while, to annoy me, my partner would be like, trust Frazzle Drip. And I was just like, you can't do that to me, man. Like, I study this stuff for a living. You can't. But I'm like, okay. But anyway, yeah, there's a through line there. And a big part of the through line is, if you look at, like, as I did, so you don't have to, like evangelical demonology literature from like the 90s and early 2000s. You have these like really elaborate taxonomies of like all the various demons in your life that are like the reason why you're tired or like anxious or depressed. And here's how you rebut them. Like, have you ever been the victim of a curse? I'm like, that's why I've been anxious this whole time. Whatever. But and then these like novels about like American towns in the grips of the devil, like, can they be saved? And these movies, a lot of this was jump started initially by like the trifecta of Rosemary's Baby and The Exorcist and The Omen, like all coming out around the same time. And a lot of the quote unquote recovered memories that came out during the 80s and 90s were just straight up scenes from Rosemary's Baby and like The Omen. So, but like, yeah, the interim, I mean, the obsession with the devil like never went away on the Christian right. And in fact, only ramped up into this doctrine of spiritual warfare, where basically every element of American society, from politics to media to entertainment, is the locus of a war between good and righteous Christians and the minions of Satan. Very much up to and including the presidential election, but also as like, mundane as like what Lil Nas X is posting today.
Yeah, they think that's like a normal, like they think that's just like an open cult.
Well, yeah, I mean,
what were we gonna say, Alex?
I was gonna say my Twitter avatar, my left eye is cropped out because of the way that they crop circular as opposed to being square, and someone accused me of some like satanic Freemasonry because that's some kind of signifier of satanic, and I was like, no, man, it's just a cropping problem.
Yeah, covering your eye or having a black eye is a sign. Yeah, actually, you know what? Now I know why Reply All was so popular. You are one of them. I've decided that they're right.
Yeah,
I love how everything's a conspiracy. Everything.
I cannot fucking wait, just as an aside, to get the Chiral Vectors show going. You guys have no fucking clue what you're in for.
I cannot wait.
I will say that the corollary to everything is a conspiracy is that anything that's stated outright doesn't matter. Like, so, Trump saying like, I'm going to deport 10 million people and like put people in camps or whatever. You're like, And then, but if it's a secret,
that's locker room
dig
talk.
around for it. Yeah. Like, like Trump is combating sexual abuse. And I know this because I saw a pattern in a clock.
And because he was in the Epstein log, he was there investigating.
Well, no, and then it's like, here's concrete evidence of like he's a rapist.
Yeah.
And they're like, well, it's out in the open. It doesn't matter. It's like, that's not relevant to me. Like what you see in the media isn't truth. Only my diagram where I show how like the tie that Trump was wearing corresponds to this ancient Mayan calendar, to also a verse from Psalms, like that is proof. And you're like, okay, cool.
Speaking of this, I just was
yeah.
looking on Twitter, and not specifically this, but just like that sort of frame of mind. I went on Twitter just a couple of minutes ago. I scrolled down because, you know, it's the most insane place of all time. A post from this really right-wing guy showed up on my timeline, and it's a picture of a Trump rally. There's a guy wearing a brick suit in the background, and Donald Trump is wearing a gold tie. The post said, "Bricks guy and a gold tie, a message to the black hats." It's like, what does that mean? What is that? What is that? What kind of a conspiracy?
The fact that you don't know, June, is
You wouldn't
really is it's an indictment of your character. I don't know what the fuck that means.
I'm gonna.
Sorry.
I need to investigate. Basically, I'm gonna be, like tonight. I'm gonna be investigating into what the fuck the black hats are.
Yeah, please let me know.
Yeah.
I'm all ears. I mean, yeah, like I just, if there's a message to be had from my book, which I hope there is, and you should buy it. And if you enjoy the dulcet sounds of my voice, I read the audiobook, and did little voices. But, you know, I think what's interesting to me is that just as the idea that American politics is this theater of war between angels and demons sounds totally bonkers to like you and me and, you know, the people that we hang out with on a regular basis, probably. And probably most of the listeners to this show, except the ones like listening to it backwards for signs of Satan.
Which we're putting in there. So if you listen to this backwards, you will find those.
Not
and
us,
those are
not us.
It will be used as an
us.
MK Ultra trigger to bring out the next holy war. Of course, this side is the satanic side. So that's just a very blatant warning for the listeners.
Yeah. I mean, but just as that seems nuts to us, the idea that we are not tuned in to the frequency of the spiritual war all around us, that we're not fighting Satan and we're not fighting evil, is just as bonkers to the people who are really invested in this worldview. They're like, what are you doing? You're throwing your life away.
There's a podcast right now of 4 people having the inversion of this conversation. They're doing inside baseball on all of this.
Yeah, they're like, just like think about this. I can't even. No, I can't even
don't let your brain go there.
They're not even worried about the oncoming apocalypse. They didn't even see the black hat. Fuck. The gold tie, bricks and a gold tie, they don't even know what's coming.
Like, they didn't even look at the positions of the clock hands in this photo that I have.
Can we we really need to lean into this, that June is one of the rescued mole children and that Alex is one of the Illuminati.
I love that. That's going to be my new identity.
I feel like I'm very happy for you, June. I feel like that's just too dangerous for my safety. I don't think I can lean too hard into that one.
We'll workshop it. We'll have a mole children workshop session.
Yeah, I'm so glad, Mole Child, that you've come out into the light. Your adrenochrome is all gone, but you're getting some artificial adrenochrome, I understand.
All of mine is going to Hillary Clinton.
Oh, good. Wow, I'm with her. This is my adrenochrome. That being, yeah, I mean, so my point is just, there are a lot of really wild and tasty, like anecdotes from my trip into demonology in the book, but also, just in general, I do think about how in a country without like any reliable healthcare and particularly mental healthcare, this spiritual doctrine that's like, why are you tired? Why are you clumsy? Why are you sad? Why are you feeling lonely? It's demons. Come like go to a deliverance minister and pay $50 and like have a room full of people pray over you in a basement until you throw up in a bucket and then you'll feel better. Like that kind of makes some sense.
Not only
And
does it
isn't
make sense, it's very attractive to have something that feels that clean to attribute it to, you know, like, oh, okay, well, I don't have to worry anymore. I don't have to get like, I don't have to pay. I don't have to worry about, you know, some kind of uncertain diagnosis. I know right away, and it's demons, and all I need to do is, you know, tithe and pray it away, basically.
Yeah, like I don't have to titrate up on like 15 different medications to see what will work for me. All I have to do is like have the Jesus prayed into me until I throw up my demon into a bucket, and then I'm good. And that sounds awesome. Like I want that to be true.
Same.
I
That would be
want
really
also.
amazing. Life would be so much easier. If I
Yeah.
could get rid of my ulcerative colitis just by throwing up my demons, holy shit, sign me up.
Yeah, incredible.
Yeah.
Yeah. Never have a bad poop again.
That's right.
Because it's demons. It's demons.
It's the demons. Fuck. I have to tell my
yeah.
gastroenterologist that. Fuck. I never thought about that.
Hey, doc, have you considered
Demons?
demons? It's demons.
It's, yeah.
Well, thank you so much for having me on. I know you guys have cool places to be and Halloween weekends to enjoy.
Yeah, where can people find your book?
Anywhere books are sold. I do encourage you to go to bookshop.org. The billionaires are acting the fool. So if you want to avoid Amazon, Bookshop is a great alternative, and it supports local indie bookstores.
I love Bookshop. Love it.
You can get the audiobook. Once again, if you enjoyed the dulcet sounds of my voice, and it's also an ebook. And please don't buy any of the weird AI clones of my book.
Yeah, I've been seeing you post about that, where there's like fake
Amazon.
images of you on these book covers with your name, and it's like, what the AI is fucking insane.
Yeah, no, I'm like writing about it because of course I am, because I'm like, I don't want them to be the only ones making money off these clones of my book.
Yeah.
I'm gonna write a piece about it, but I downloaded a fake, like, so now it's a thing where if a book comes out with a big publisher, they're just like a series of weird clone things that pop up with like the SEO appropriate titles. But they're all called like biographies or summaries because otherwise it's illegal. So there's multiple quote unquote biographies of Talia Lavin, me, just floating around Amazon right now, including one with a picture of me on the cover, but it's like yassified.
Oh
Like
my
it's
God.
really hot
amazing.
and like wearing like a goth lace top, and I just am sitting here. I was sitting here like Vito Corleone, being like, "Look how they yassified my clone. Look how they massacred my boy."
See, that's the real AI is the real demon, is what I've learned.
Yeah, and it's busy like spewing out misshapen mega demons and shrimp Jesuses. And,
Yes, the shrimp Jesus.
like big titty centaur women to lead our grandparents astray on Facebook.
Oh my
it is,
God.
and burning the world, much like Satan would do if he had the chance.
Ooh,
AI,
the overlap is crazy.
Oh my, yeah. Once you start putting all those threads together,
Tech
Talia,
is
did you buy that? I'm looking at it right now. That's the most crazy thing I've ever seen. Did you buy one of these? Just to see what it is?
So 2 of them are print to order. I didn't want to like
great sign.
Like buy a paperback of like my own AI biography. I did buy the Kindle version of Talia Lavin biography of an American journalist. And I've started reading it. It's only 31 pages, which is a great book length. And it reads like
From your
like it was
early days as a
written-
curious and determined investigator to your current status as a leading voice against white supremacy. Look at that.
Yeah, that's one of the better written ones. This one reads like it was translated by an AI it was written by an AI in one language and then translated by an AI into another. So instead of hate groups, it says disdain bunches. And apparently I'm quote unquote
Disdain bunches? That
it's
rocks.
disdain bunches. She's strongly against disdain bunches. And then instead of saying that I'm like against anti-Semitism, it says that I'm hostile to Semitism. I'm not. I'm just Jewish, guys.
Oh my
But-
god!
Wow.
Yeah.
I kind of
look
think I
up-
might have just changed my mind on AI. Maybe it actually is pretty sweet.
This is funny.
No,
disdain
no.
bunches. Disdain bunches is going to enter my everyday vocabulary now. I love disdain bunches.
Yeah, it's like they're grapes and they're full of disdain. But yeah, I just no AI is evil. Look how they yassified my clone.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
Anyway,
Yeah.
on that chaotic note,
All right.
I'll let you be. But also, if you want to read more of my work that's not in the form of a book about the worst stuff in the United States, right now, I have a newsletter called The Sword and the Sandwich. And like every Tuesday, I write about the horrors. And then every Friday, I write about a different sandwich. Like an actual sandwich, not like a metaphorical.
Oh, I love that.
Sandwich. And you can find it on Button Down because I left Substack because of the Nazis. Yay.
They're everywhere. They're everywhere.
Yeah, everywhere. Demons. By the way, when I was saying Natas before, that's Satan backwards. Just a little clue to the backwards listeners.
Wow.
Hello.
June is a mole child.
I am.
See?
It's true. It's true.
All right.
Amazing.
Talia,
Yeah.
thank you so much for your time. I really, really appreciate it. I feel like we could talk about this for like another hour, but we got to like page 2 of my questions and notes. So maybe another time.
This is-
I'm so
in the meantime,
sorry.
I
Oh no,
really do
don't
wanna finish your
apologize.
book.
This is I think a topic that I'm pretty sure Caleb we'll probably revisit this. I think we want to revisit the specific topic of like the satanic panic and like how it like has infiltrated like America, like American far right ideology. I think this is something
Barely scratched
we'll
the surface. Yeah, and we
This
didn't
is-
get to the QAnon part too much, which is unfortunate because it's very relevant. So
I think
Anyway.
this we'll have future episodes talking about
I
this.
mean,
I
I'm
think.
sorry we couldn't get through 40 years in 40 minutes. Like,
There's a lot.
there's just a lot going on, and I have a compulsion to make terrible jokes. So, I'm sorry, Caleb.
No. This
But
is
if-
amazing.
Yeah, and this was a genuine pleasure to like actually be a little lighthearted, because it's all been very heavy in this book tour.
It's a bleak world that we live in.
Yeah, and like the election's coming up in 2 fucking weeks or less at this point
Oh,
or
yeah.
whatever, and I'm just like amazed I'm not breaking out in hives like every 35 seconds. Like, this is rough, man.
Yeah.
Especially having spent the last 3 years just like with my head down in the horror soup of theocracy. But at any rate, I read a lot of shit, so you didn't have to,
Thank you.
including Taxonomies of Demons. So check out the book, and but also thank you so much for like, I haven't done a podcast with like 3 hosts before, so it's fun because we're all pinging off each other. And hope I didn't like step on anyone's toes. But it was
No, you're
lovely.
great.
you're great.
Yeah.
Oh,
Wonderful. to have
okay,
you.
well, have me on again, and we can do a deep dive. You and
Hell
me,
yeah.
Caleb. We'll like
Yeah.
we'll dive in.
Sounds like fun.
Hell yeah.
Okay. Dive into the